My heartiest congratulations to Manjari for this wonderful piece of work. I have known Manjari for practically over a decade now. We started on the Heal platform itself, the Nutritionist Republic, and then went on. And since then, believe me, I have been following Manjari very closely. I have been attending her lectures, webinars, and definitely TV debates. She's such an eloquent speaker. And now this book writing, you have done a wonderful job because people can read it, then there are confusion, they can go back and forth, refer to the book. And I'm sure everyone will enjoy reading this book on Eat Up and Clean Up. And I'm really feeling so thrilled, honored, and proud to launch this book.
Shagun, those are really, really beautiful words. And my heartiest gratitude to Dr. Jitendra Kumar. He's one of the people I really look up to. And thank you for the lovely words, sir. I'll not take much of your time. We'll move on to the panel discussion, but I wanted to do a couple of minutes of book reading. So I'm going to read a few pages from the book, a couple of them. The first page that I'm reading is actually from the first chapter of the book. It's called Nutrition: From a Need to a Trade. To start the reading, unfortunately, we have gotten all tangled up in the sticky web of specialty diets and healthy ingredients that promise to burn our pockets. The focus has now shifted from eating healthy to losing weight. And that translates to the end justifies all means philosophy. Teenagers and young adults choose to cut carbohydrates and all kind of fat from their diet to desperately attempt to lose weight, forgetting that in these formative years of lives, they are eliminating essential micronutrients. As I consult individuals in the clinics or talk to multiple people at various platforms, conferences, workshops, I'm amazed at the fact that the questions stay basic and simple. Many highly educated, well-read, and informed people I speak to ask questions that show that there is an overload of confusing and contradictory information. Questions like, what oil should I use? Is ghee okay, or is olive oil a better choice? Should I eat any fat in my diet, or should I go completely fat-free? Is green tea better than my brewed masala tea? My masala tea makes me happy, whereas green tea makes me really grumpy. Is it safe to use a sweetener? How many servings in which category of sweetener is safe? Should I drink cold-pressed vegetable juice or 100% Tetra Pak juice? If I don't eat carbs at night, how do I sleep peaceful, hungry, deprived stomach? Why is everybody shifting to chia seeds? Are they better than the melon seeds that I've been eating all my life? This book essentially attempts to answer such basic questions and links them to fact and a traditional cultural knowledge. A little more, please. Fast food. A little note on fast food. Fast food, may sound like a modern thing, but its roots date back to the early 1900s. Thanks to a number of factors, including modernization, mechanizations, feminist movements, increase in quality of life, social progress, and more importantly, the world wars. However, the markets actually took off in the second half of the 20th century when women shouldered the responsibility of earning breads for their family. Entrepreneurs were quick to acknowledge that they had a consumer base in which hands they could shell, or they had the bucks to shell out, but had scarcity of time to take care of their food and nutrition. A study titled Food Processing, A Century of Change, which was published by the Oxford Journal, stated, with the increasing standard of living, women soon understood that restaurants could be good alternatives to their home cooking. The feminist movements of the period proposed automated food chains and centralized kitchens. The main goal was to liberate women from the drudgery of home cooking, which was time-consuming and at the same time very costly. The concept of ready-cooked food soon spread around the country. Fast food describes food products that can be prepared and served very quickly. Fast food is actually typically anything that you see, which is a fast food meal of a burger with pies and a cola. Do you know that a normal fast food serving contains around 1200 kilocalories, typically more than the amount recommended for a sedentary adult? The cola alone, apart from its caffeine and its coloring, contains more than 8 teaspoons of sugar. Although this meal is macro and energy dense, it's deprived of micronutrients. You know, the fast food industry is increasing. McDonald's, the world's largest hamburger chain, serves at least 13,000 customers a minute, or more than 98 million customers every week. This is not surprising since fast food is so affordable and convenient for all age groups. A survey has found that around 25% adolescents in India visit fast food outlets once a week at least. But many dishes that we eat outside can be replicated at home with a much healthier twist. And that makes a lot of difference.
So, Mr. Vivek, I'd like to ask you in here, what's your take on nutrition and food becoming the treatment mode?
Well, while I run a home healthcare company where we treat a lot of chronically ill patients, where the biggest contribution we could give for the life improvement or improvement of the life of the patient is the non-pharmacological interventions, and the first non-pharmacological intervention is diet, right? So I think it is one of the key elements of managing your disease and remaining healthy. So whichever programs we run, and we run about 40 different programs across multiple pharma companies as well as our own programs, and across a variety of chronic diseases. Almost all the programs have a lot of elements built in around nutrition. In fact, we have about 100 plus nutritionists in our company who are counseling a lot of patients across the country on any given day basis. Personally speaking, it is very, very crucial for us. I've had interactions with Manjari in the past as well. I myself used to be a 100 kg individual many years ago, and I truly believe that nutrition can change a lot of things. While weight loss is one thing, but the fact that you become healthy while eating good food is something which I have experienced myself. Over the last many years, I have made sure that I eat the right thing and control my tendency of gaining weight. So personally, also, I'm very interested in nutrition.
Your take on the topic, and can you ever imagine that Mr. Vivek sitting here was 100 kgs and he actually believes in that thought?
He's already working for a healthcare service, and providing facilities at home. But to come to the real point of, I have seen over my journey of 45 years after my graduation to becoming a neurosurgeon, that from a dietitian to a nutritionist to a clinical nutritionist, and then what all, the term functional nutrition. So you see, eventually I, as one also being director of a big chain of hospitals and otherwise, always promote this nutritional aspect. Because now it has been known, proven, almost every branch needs a different SOP. For example, renal diets are different, cardiac diets are different. And there is so much of clash between cardiac patients and neuro patients. I'm a neurosurgeon. All my sick patients who are unconscious, they are doing nothing, but they're losing weight because of severe catabolic state. We need to provide them different diet, different proteins, different fats. Because now you see, I'll give you a small tip. Like cardiac patients and neuro, they have some problem. Cardiologists, they don't want to use fats, but in neuro, if we don't give them good type of fat, the myelination, the the messages don't travel fast. So they went into memory loss, depressions and dementias. So to balance all that, we need a very good clinical nutrition. And I have seen Manjari doing wonderful job over the years. And we had also planning something about ONCO. ONCO is coming in a big way. So ONCO nutrition is going to be a big, is going to be a big issue. So all oncology patients, cancer patients, they need a very different diet, which Manjari knows. And
It's wonderful to see the initiatives that you've taken over the past few years. But I think Ms. Ashi here has a take on this, and we're over to Ms. Ashi. What's your take on this?
I wanted to bring in the concept of not, highlight the concept of health and, differentiate between working towards health and keeping healthy rather than just focusing on treatment of, food being used as a treatment and diets as treatment. Of course, they have great value. And the reason I say this is because I am a public health nutritionist. I work in public health. And, in our country, we are dealing with the, we're dealing with the issue of triple burden of malnutrition. And when I say triple burden, let me take a minute to explain that. One is overall undernutrition, which we see a lot in young children, and that state of undernutrition in early life, before the age of 2 years, is what it affects you throughout your adult life as well. So diet has its very important, starting from the first 1,000 days, which is from conception up to the age that you are 2 years old, because your brain, not only your physical growth, but also your cognitive development, your brain is developing the fastest at that point of time. And that is a capital that you have for the rest of your life. There is plenty of evidence that undernutrition at that time affects your educability, your physical growth, your cognitive development, and ultimately your earnings through life. So that's one form of malnutrition. The second form of malnutrition is the triple burden that I said. The second one is undernutrition of critical micronutrients. We talk about micronutrients, they're required in very small amounts, but they're really, really important. So it's anemia. We have all heard of anemia, deficiency of iron, deficiency of folate, and all of these, they really, these deficiencies of micronutrients is the second form of malnutrition that's widely prevalent in our country. Over 50% of men, women and children in the country are anemic, and almost about between 25 and 35% of men are anemic as well. So it's rampant. The third form of malnutrition, which we've been talking about, is the other spectrum of malnutrition, to do with obesity, overweight, to do with hypertension, diabetes, and other diet-related non-communicable diseases. These are very, very rapidly rising in our country, and you see it within same households. You will see the triple burden of malnutrition. So that's the reason that I think that nutrition is really, really important. That's what kind of diets we eat. Most importantly, it has to be balanced.
Do you think nutrition and food will become the treatment modality in coming times?
Well, Shagun, I do not know whether it will become a treatment modality, but of course now there is a lot of importance for nutrition. As Dr. Kumar said, it is mandatory now for hospitals and doctors to, ask patients to consult a nutritionist, and the diet is prescribed. But the big problem is, if you say that nutrition is a medicine, then people may not take such now, because that's a long journey. It's a long-term investment. If you eat good food, as I said, it's a long-term investment. If you need immediate effect, of course, you need to pop a pill, of course. But I would say that this COVID has now driven a lot of people from restaurants to the kitchen, home food. And that is a good trend. And people are now eating healthy food. At least now they have known, the importance of nutritious food, tasty food, and a balanced diet. So that will, if it's, as I said, it's a long-term investment. You cannot say that overnight you will have a change having a healthier diet. No, that will not happen. So I think people will realize very soon. I was just reading an interesting, cartoon by Lockhorn. It said, now dinner should actually be named as satellite dishes because people don't concentrate on food. They concentrate on TV. I think it's also important that when you have food, you need to know what you are eating, enjoy, and as you said, Shagun, sit together and enjoy the food that you eat. But many of the times these youngsters, they eat food, they don't know what is going into their mouth. I think that is also an important part of nutrition.
Manjari, what do you have to say about this? Because it's a very valid point. So, of course, we want your take. We know that you do support the idea of nutrition will eventually not replace, but it is extremely important. But what do you have to say about Mr. Shankar's thought process?
Everybody really added a lot of value to the discussion. But I have two things to say. One is, of course, a takeaway from Shankar sir's point.
Yeah.
When you look at food, for example, food is, when you look at food as healthy, when you look at food as something that there are many parts to it. So many times, we tell people that the bonhomie of eating a meal with your family and friends is always better than sitting in a corner and eating salad. That salad will not do you good, but if you eat a wholesome meal with your friends and family, it's going to not only make you healthier and nourish you better, but it's also working at a psychosomatic level. There is, for example, let's take an example. We're talking a lot about gut microflora and gut microbiome now. We know that immunity rests in the gut. We know that a lot of our neurological conditions, our happiness hormones are made in the gut. But do you know that something as simple as the gut microbiome requires food? You need to feed that healthy bacteria. And to feed that healthy bacteria, you need something short chain fatty acids. Things like butyrate, ghee has plenty of it, coconut oil has plenty of it. But then when you go off ghee completely and go off fat completely and only eat boiled food and boiled soup for food, it's never going to be wholesome, and it's not going to provide nutrition not only to you, but also to the gut microbiome that needs that fat to multiply. So there is more to food than, just breaking it down, proteins, fats, carbs, and micronutrients. It's very wholesome in nature, And another thing that, if in the book also, that's something that written many times, I think, is that the conversation about food has been limited to proteins. And so, even today, the minute we start talking to a patient or a client in our clinics and in our cabins, the first thing they ask us is, how many calories am I supposed to eat? What should I eat? 1200 calories or 900 calories or 1600 calories? Not even knowing that there is no way they'll be able to manage or calculate their own calories.
And we can see Dr. Maya smiling, and she has lots to say on this. Dr. Maya, please tell us, are we heading towards a trend like Ms. Manjari just mentioned, that people, when they are on their phones, the most Googled word is calories, and nutritious or nutrition is nowhere close?
Okay, sure. So let me start from the background, right? So I'm a medical doctor who, after a few years stint into clinical practice, went on to the other side of the healthcare spectrum, which is the pharmaceuticals and medical nutrition and devices. And so maybe this was the reason that, my horizons about nutrition and overall holistic healthcare, were broadened. But if I have to revisit my medical college days, then, we hardly studied nutrition. It was considered such a general subject, such an easy subject that we as medicos never used to pay any heed to it. But it was much later, we realized that we talk about obesity, we talk about hypertension and diabetes and metabolic syndrome and other cardiovascular diseases, and all of them are having their roots in poor nutrition habits.